I'm one of the co-chairs of our water resources study action team, along with John Wallack. And I'm going to lead off with a little background of Conifer Area Council and what our efforts are with water issues in the Conifer area. So this will just be a brief introduction, and then let's see. Sometimes the magic works. So who are we? We're a 501c3 nonprofit, rooted grass efforts that began in 1997 to work on the Conifer-285 Corridor plan. We're work with community members serving in various study action teams, and the water resources is one of those. We have a board of directors, and several members of our board are here, and we have some professional advisors. This is our area. It extends
Actually, just
a pretty good chunk of Jefferson County,
this one right
southern
here,
end.
real easy.
And then what are our goals? It's educate and communicate. Our quarterly town hall meetings that many of you may attend, email updates and development updates. We facilitate special community meetings like this and events like we help out with the Elevations celebration in July. And we also identify and address issues. So this is done through community surveys, and we form the study action teams, this being one of them. Our Water Resources Study Action Team was formed after the April 2018 town hall meeting. There was so much interest in water resources, we thought it was worth putting together a team that would work on water resource issues. And we're out to educate, which this is part of, and also look at what we can do as a local community, as advocates for our water resources, to study what's going on with the water up here. And then we also collaborate with county, state, and federal officials. We've got a couple of county people here for the presentation today, and state. We have a very good working relationship with them. Our background, for those of you who don't know, we're a mountain community far away from large rivers. It's a long way down to the South Platte, and we can't tap into it. Of course, everybody knows that water flows uphill to money. It would take a lot of money to even get the water rights to get something out of the Platte, much less infrastructure to get that kind of water here. So we really are entirely dependent on groundwater from wells, which puts us in a little bit of a disadvantage and a challenge for how we manage that resource. Recent development activity that keeps coming up, potential high-density housing developments, we think about how that might impact our water resources. Do we have the water to support that kind of development? So we wanted to be able to study the issues and inform the community about what we can see going on. Our agenda, which we have a printed copy there, but I'll say a little bit more than just that. I'm giving the intro right now, and then I'm going to follow up with basic groundwater 101, and I see a lot of experts in here, so I apologize if I'm going to be speaking way down in the lower level, but I wanted to do it for people who just don't have the background in groundwater, much less watershed issues. So I'm going to keep it to a level that most people can understand. Then John Wallack is going to follow up with some information and data that we have on the centralized water systems and some water quality issues that we're watching. And then we've got Roy Laws from the County Health Department that's going to give a more detailed discussion on drinking water from private wells and the wastewater treatment systems, because we're totally dependent on those up here. Then we'll take a 20-minute break. And then after that, we'll have Russ Clayshulte from Bear Creek Watershed Association come and talk about the Bear Creek Watershed, which we are part of his watershed. Everything we put into the system from up here, flush the toilets, dump into the creek, goes to it's part of his watershed. So it'll be great to get his perspective on how we fit in his watershed. And then we have Aliyah Santistevan from the Division of Water Resources to talk about water rights and water resource administration. We know a lot of people just really want to understand what it is with their well permits, and if they have augmentation plans or adjudicate their groundwater. She will address that. Heather Gutherless is going to follow up and talk about the county. She's with planning and zoning, and we'll talk about the water policies within the land use policies. Then we're going to follow up with a question and answer session where all of us will be up here. That'll allow you guys to have questions, and we can address them. Each one of us would have an opportunity to answer part of it. And as with our town hall meetings, we're not going to open it up to questions after each presentation. We're going to hold off. We've got some index cards in the back. We ask you to write your questions down on the index cards, and then we will address those with the panel. So that's what our structure today will be. So now I'll move on to my background. It's Groundwater 101. All right, our essential water resource up here. And this is a fractured crystalline bedrock aquifer, and I'm going to talk about what that means. Most of you probably already know that. Outline groundwater in the fractured crystalline bedrock, our geologic setting, your well, what is it, watershed water balance, and then the inputs that go into understanding water balance in our watershed. What is an aquifer and what is groundwater? Groundwater is water found in pore spaces of rock, sediments, or soils. You have little grains in here, they're filled with water. The primary aquifer types, there's alluvial aquifers. This is just loose sand, loose grains of sand. Water fills the pore spaces between those grains. This is probably one of the most prolific, but limited in extent because you find it only along active streams. Sedimentary bedrock aquifers, which are what we see out east of the Hogback. Denver Basin is a classic example. Those little sand grains are glued together with minerals that harden them to a consolidated bedrock. There's similar pore space, but less of it, and you have the cement that blocks the pore spaces between the grains. And then, this isn't very common in Colorado, there are karst aquifers, which is solution channels and carbonate limestone, and you have caverns with fissures. Manitou Springs is a good example of that. Well, here we are. We are in what's called the fractured crystalline bedrock aquifer. And there we have water in the open fractures. Fractured crystalline bedrock. Crystalline rock is made up of tightly interlocking crystals, and there's essentially no primary pore space in there to begin with. And there, up here, the common rocks we have are igneous rock, which are rocks that were formed as a molten magma and then cooled, and the crystals grew within that body as it cooled. We also have metamorphic rock. And these were rocks that may have been sediments before, and they were deeply buried and recrystallized to interlocking grains at high pressure and temperature. What you need are fractures in there. You can see that there's that rock that has no pore space, but there's a nice fracture here that you can tell this continuously weeps water because that fracture is carrying water. And that's what you need to be able to have an effective aquifer out of this. Up here, you can either have very highly fractured crystalline bedrock. This is just up 73 here as you head towards Evergreen. Or you can have pretty massive crystalline rock with teeny tiny fractures that may not even go anywhere. And you can't even see it. There's a nice fracture here and it ends right there. So you get the whole gamut of highly fractured or barely fractured at all. So why is it here? This crystalline bedrock occurs in the cores of most of our mountain ranges in the Intermountain West. There's a fault system here that separates the old Precambrian, this is a 1.6, 1.7 billion year old Precambrian rock. It's it forms the foothills, and it's separated by this major fault system from the deep Denver Basin, where you have thousands of feet of sedimentary rock on top of the crystalline rock. That's why we find this here. Now, throughout Colorado, the pinkish color in here is the distribution of crystalline bedrock throughout the state. There's also an orange that doesn't show up very well in the red. Those are the outcrops based on the state scale map of crystalline bedrock. It's these areas in the mountainous region of Colorado where communities like us may be entirely dependent on crystalline bedrock if they don't have a through-going stream nearby. Okay, what's your well? Hopefully everybody knows what their well is when they see it out there, but I think people who move up here and take for granted that they turn on the faucet, they've got water, they may not right away understand what this little construction is out behind their house. A well in this environment is a hole in the ground you pour money into, but it penetrates through the crystalline bedrock with the intent of intersecting fractures. You're looking for good fractures when you drill these wells. And you'll drill and drill and drill before you know you've got good fractures. Good driller might know. He might say, I just hit a fracture. A lot of times they're just busy working controls and aren't paying any attention. I love this outcrop. If you drive up the frontage road along I-70 between Morrison Road and the Mount Vernon turnoff, there are all these blast holes from when they put I-70 in. This is what your well looks like if you could do a cross-section of it. Now these are only about 2-inch diameter. Our wells are typically 6 inches in diameter. But you can see, here's looking up in the hole from underneath. Here's the cutaway of a drill hole. And so what you do is you drill until you find these fractures. And what you want is to intersect the fractures that are carrying water. You can see here's one of the blast holes right here, and it drilled right through that fracture. So when we drill these, you drill until you see water. And a good driller will know you might be seeing just dry dust for hundreds of feet, and you're watching money go down the hole, and drilling, 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 just getting dust. And then eventually you'll hit a fracture that's carrying water, and if you're lucky, it's going to carry a lot of water. And the driller might see little clumps of mud coming out, might actually have water start streaming out. That means you're going to have a good well. Now, over a period of time, and that depends on how much water is in the fractures, water will start to fill the borehole. When it stabilizes, this depth is dependent on the pressure of water in all the fractures around your borehole. We call that the static water level when it stabilizes. A lot of times you just don't have the time to see that when you're drilling because the driller needs to move on. But when you let the well sit, it'll eventually equilibrate. And for those more technically involved in a good porous aquifer, the water table, that depth is where the water pressure in the pore spaces equals atmospheric. That's the physics behind it. In a fractured aquifer, it's much more complicated. Really depends on the weight of the water in all these fractures. If you have a whole bunch of points that you get static water level, you connect them, and that's called the water table. You'll hear that a lot. So moving on, when you put a pump in the well and start pumping it, you pull water out of storage from your well bore, and it's the contribution from the fractures in there. And the pumping water level is that level that the water level drops while you're pumping. And that, I'll explain a little bit later, that depends on the ability of the aquifer to yield water to your well and the power of your pump. So some important terms that people may hear and wonder, what does that mean? Well depth, that's pretty obvious. That's how much money you put in the ground to get to the depth you need to have a well. It's just literally the depth of the well from the surface. And then first water. This is important because you don't want to confuse first water with the static water level. A lot of times you'll hear drilling, drilling, drilling. Then you hit water, but the water level in the well comes up above that first water. This is, people often don't think about this first water when they think of their water level, but that reflects these water-bearing fractures you hit down here. And then static water level, which I already explained, is what the water level rises to when it equilibrates with atmosphere. Pump setting, that's the depth your pump is, that's fairly obvious. Pumping water level is what your water level drops to while you're pumping. Drawdown is the height, the loss of height from the water table to your pumping water level. You may hear the term drawdown a lot. Wellbore storage, I'm going to say more about this. This is really important to keep in mind. That's how much water sits in your well bore between your pump and the static water level. So how do you estimate? This is really good to know if you all must have wells, but what is the storage? Because that has a lot to do with how much you can produce from your well. That takes into account the depth of the pump, the water level over your pump, and the hole diameter. And a good example that I came up with, you have a 550-foot well, 6 inches in diameter, a pump at 500 feet, static water level at 100 feet. You've got 400 feet of water over the pump. That equates to 78.5 cubic feet of water, or 587 gallons of water. So what does that mean to you as a homeowner? Typically, a household uses 250 to 300 gallons per day. That's that's 2 days of water in storage alone. And so if you have a good producing aquifer, you've got a well that will sustain your needs. In the mountains, the well yield, the aquifer yield, is what the aquifer will produce to your well. It's reported in gallons per minute. For Turkey Creek, the range is less than 1/10 of a gallon a minute to 50 gallons a minute. The mean value is 55 gallons per minute for metamorphic, 5.4 for intrusive. I don't know that I trust these numbers. I think they're high. But we have a fairly good range of aquifer yields reported. Again, 300 gallons per day, you only need 0.21 gallons per minute. So pump rate, and this you need to keep in mind how much your pump can produce, which is also reported in gallons per minute. That depends on the height above the pump, or from the water table, the height it has to pump to the ground surface. It's the weight of that column of water and the horsepower of your pump. Not to be confused with aquifer yield. And this is why, if your pump yield exceeds your aquifer yield, continued pumping will pull that water out of storage and what the aquifer will produce until it gets down to the pump. And the rate will continue to drop as that happens because the pump has to lift the water more. And you'll get to a lower rate, and you can damage your pump. So it's really important to know the difference between what your pump can do and what your aquifer can do. No two wells are alike. This is back over on the frontage road. I just love this outcrop. These are those blast holes, and you can see on an interval of a couple of feet how different each one of these looks. You hear about one person who has a well that's 300 feet deep and makes 10 gallons a minute, but you had to go 700 feet and you're barely making a gallon a minute. This is a really good example of why that is. We have an intrusive igneous body here, uniform, all fractured. You come over here and you've got these layered metamorphic rocks, and I look at a couple of these boreholes here and I don't see many fractures for the whole depth of that, but you look over here and look how fractured that is. That could be night and day between what wells and those two rock types do. And they're 50 feet apart. Water balance. This is going to move on from an individual well to the water balance. Previous studies, USGS Turkey Creek Watershed in 2003, Kip Basong was the lead author on that, and then Upper Mountain Communities Aquifer Study Project that looked at many more communities along the Front Range. And the Turkey Creek study estimated the water balance in Turkey Creek watershed, which we're a part of, with a calibrated model, and I'll say a little bit more about the details of that. While the mountain community took a different look on a wider range and refined the model that went into this. This is our Turkey Creek watershed outlined in red, and we're sitting right about here. So we're at the upper end of that watershed. We're at the headwaters of Turkey Creek. This is important to keep in mind. We are a headwaters community with only groundwater. The Turkey Creek study looked at the major rock types, the foliated metamorphic rocks that are in blue, the gray intrusive igneous rocks, and then we have fault zones with the highly fractured rocks that I mentioned earlier, and then Pikes Peak granite. Their study considered all the rocks into these four major groupings. And the water balance, it's like a bank account. Think about your bank account, that you've got money coming in, you're spending money going out. You maintain a balance in that. That's your storage. So we've got inflow, which is precipitation. We have recharge, which is the precipitation that goes into the ground, into the aquifer, down to fill those fractures, as well as recharge from your individual on-site wastewater treatment system. We've got outflow, which evapotranspiration is what's lost through evaporation directly from the ground and transpired through vegetation. Runoff that comes down the stream. Groundwater underflow. And part of the underflow goes to the stream. There's a part that we think has to go out of the entire basin. And then there's pumping from the wells. Then there's aquifer storage. I'm going to talk about storage again. It's so important in both your well and the aquifer up here. Those are the primary factors of the water balance. If the inflow is greater than outflow, you add to storage, your water table is going to rise. Outflow greater than inflow, you're going to take from storage, and your water level is going to drop. Simple as that. It doesn't get a whole lot more basic than that and easy to understand. Bottom line, diminishing storage is not sustainable. If you pull more from your bank account than you're putting in, you're going to run out of money. This is just another view of the system. That is a 3D block diagram that shows overload flow, precipitation, evapotranspiration, and then there's this groundwater sink. I hit one button too many. Anyway, okay. This is kind of a mystery term because the balance needed something for some numbers to go to make it work, and the conclusion is there has to be a little bit of groundwater leaving the system beneath the hogback as we head out into the basin. The underflow is complicated. There's interflow, which is through the superficial deposits, the regolith. I see that on my driveway right now because of all the precipitation we have. The road cut is seeping a little bit of water in many places. That's just coming through the soil, hitting the bedrock, running down the hillside. And then there's base flow that's deeper in the bedrock. That sustains the base flow of the streams. And then there's this groundwater sink that I mentioned that is probably heading out of the basin through the fractured rock. Water balance that the Turkey Creek study came up with an average precipitation of 17.1. Evapotranspiration, this is a big number, 87% at 14.8. Think about that. Stream flow, 11% at 1.9 inches. Groundwater sink is 2% at 0.4. Empirical data, this is where we really have to think about how do we understand this system? What parameters that go into this water balance do we have good data for? Precipitation, yes, we've got pretty good data for precipitation. There's 145 stations in Jefferson County. Data is available through the National Weather Service. But while we have a good handle, but we all know there's a cloud over the future on what our precipitation is going to be with climate change. Evapotranspiration for the Turkey Creek watershed study, There were 2 towers installed and monitored for 3 years to come up with some estimates of evapotranspiration. Those are probably fairly good numbers. And I just learned at a water conference about a month ago that NASA has a satellite, MODIS, that's collecting ET data on a 500-meter grid. And we need to talk about how we can plug that into our water availability analysis, because it might be better data. I haven't tried to play with the data yet because I just learned about it. So we do have some evapotranspiration that we could call empirical data. Runoff, we have 3 permanent gauging stations on Turkey Creek, but my understanding is only one of those is active. And it's pretty far down the watershed. It's down here as you go down Turkey Creek Canyon, and the active one, I believe, is down there closer to Bear Creek Lake. So there is some data, but it's not real local to us. We don't have good data right around us. Recharge, this is estimated. These numbers were backed out from the water balance. And there have been a number of studies looking at recharge from septic systems, and the data are all over the place, and there's some doubt whether it really means anything. Pumping by wells, we don't have meters on our wells. We really don't know what people are pumping. When we do these water balances, we look at what the permit allows you to do, and assumes that you're pumping what your permit lets you do, which is not a safe assumption. So we really don't have a handle on pumping from wells. Underflow, that's estimated because we really don't know the permeability of this crystalline rock to the level that you could say with some certainty how much is going through with underflow. Aquifer storage, same thing, estimated. We really don't have hard data on what these fractures are like. Very heterogeneous. The Turkey Creek Watershed study did an assessment of the fracture density and permeability porosity, and there were several orders of magnitude estimates that they came up with for the parameters that affect what your storage is. And again, I show that the difference is, this is so fractured, you might get good values. So what have we got? We've got measured, only 2 of our water balance are measured with some reasonable values, and at any rate, it's very limited. So how sustainable is this? And using what we know and what we can monitor, how do we estimate how we're doing? We can do better. Aquifer storage is really, like I said, this is your savings account. We know, you can tell how you're doing by monitoring what's in your balance. And so water level data is the best way to do that. That gives you an idea of how your storage is doing. Who will take this on? Conifer, John and I are working with the data to try to get an idea of that, but it really would take cooperation from people in the community to help us do this. So just a little bit of an example of what it looks like these water levels are telling us. These are completed permitted wells and right around the activity center, and at the time the wells are completed, they report a water level. It's part of the record on file, the permit file. We don't know that the wells have really equilibrated. We don't know if they're measured the same way. There's a lot we don't know about them, but we can take the data. This is a cross-section right through our activity center. And if I look at wells along that cross-section, there are 17 measurements over 4 decades. These are wells of different depths and different rock types. If you look at the water levels along that and connect them with a line, you can connect a fairly smooth surface, which tells me that the water levels, the storage is maintaining. If we were losing 20, 30 feet of year because of overpumping, you would see a less regular line connecting these. So that tells me that our storage is doing okay up here. Another way to look at it is to compare water levels with climate data. John and I have been working on this. This is from the Evergreen Station, and we've got almost 25 years of climate data and water level data that John's going to talk about in more detail. Solid blue line is just the annual totals of the curve drawn through it. The red line is a 5-year average through those reported totals. The little snowflakes, this is important to think about, those are the totals for January through May. And as you all know, May's been a pretty wet month so far. Those are the months we get the snowfall, and also we get the big melts of snowfall. So if we look at those, and the little dashed lines are trend lines on the snowflakes. So if we look at some water levels, and I'm just going to put this up here, John's going to talk about how we get this. And this is from a well in the activity center with a continuous water level device in it. And if you look at that, the water levels, when we see the totals over January through May going up, we see a rise in the water levels. When the snow totals drop, we see a flattening or a slight decrease. There again, there's a decrease. And now we see a rise in the snowfall totals. We see a rise in water levels. I think this is telling us very clearly that from this well, and John will show more, we don't see a steady decline over the 25, well this is a 20-year period. We see a signal reflecting what our snowy months are. So this is really important for how our bank account's doing up here. So this will be the cloud on this right now, because the CWC, Colorado Water Conservation Board, had a study done by CSU on how climate change may affect our water resources. And we see temperatures going up. Precipitation is likely to go down. We may get a lot more storm events, but the total precipitation will go down. Snowpack goes down. If we lose these heavy, wet snows in the January through May period, we lose this really important time when the snow falls, melts, it recharges our aquifer. Stream flow down, soil moisture down, and this is the other negative, evapotranspiration up. You see that that's already 87% of our loss from our balance. If this goes up, we're going to lose even more as we lose the recharge from snowpack. So I hate to end on such a dire piece of information. So I'm wrapping up, and these are some references you would find interesting. Also a link to the Colorado Geological Survey, of which I am employed by, and I thank you. And now we're going to move on to John.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Good morning. Thanks everyone for participating in this seminar. My name is John Wallack. I'll be talking about mountain water use and recharge and quality, water quality. If I can figure out the, there we go. Here's an overview map of the Conifer Activity Center, and that's the solid blue line here. And if you, all the green symbols inside of that represent wells, 377 within the Activity Center. And the 4 centralized systems that we have in Conifer are Conifer High School, CWA, CSA, that's Conifer Water Association, Conifer Sanitation Association. CMD is Conifer Metro District, that's down by the Safeway, and up by Aspen Park Metro District is located by King Soopers. It's interesting to note here on the bottom, these pink lines. The lines represent the boundaries between watersheds. And Conifer development here, the activity center, actually straddles actually straddles one of these boundaries right by Clarkson's. Everything, all the water that falls below or south of that line is going to go down Kennedy Gulch to South Fork, the South Platte. Everything above that line is going to go down either South Creek, or South Turkey Creek, or North Turkey Creek. Both of the headwaters are right in this area. So we sit high in a watershed, and we don't have large lakes or streams, so we're very much dependent on the well water. Let's see. How much water do these centralized systems produce? The volume that we're seeing on the three centralized systems along 285 are, we're running, averaging 34,100 gallons per day throughout the year. That comes to 38 acre feet per year. That's what we're pulling out of the fractured rock aquifer. So the half of that water, the green portion of these years, these are all water years ending at the end of October, half of that is the green section, that's Aspen Park Metro District. The blue section is Conifer Metro District. So, let's see. This is the recharge that I've been tracking this since 2009 or 10 here. Where we were last, the last time we did one of these seminars was November of 2018. And look where the recharge was at that point. The trends were looking negative, and we were definitely not up at the 95% mark, which is what the decrees stated. So that was our first concern in the water study action team, is where do we have adequate recharge? And so that was our first focus. And right now, if you look, the last 4 years, CMD has been right up there at 95%. If you see it go over 100%, it's because they process the CSA water. Their effluent is piped down to Conifer Metro District, processed at the wastewater treatment plant, and then piped right back up and released to surface by the Sinclair station by Highway 73. So, looking at Peter's profile or cross-section here, you can see we've got a very big fault zone by the south end of our activity center. And you can estimate these, sorry. There we go. And he's estimated the static water level across all these wells from their construction data. What we were wondering is, as we're pumping 34,000 gallons a day, are we keeping a good balance? Is the static water levels hanging in there? And so we wanted to know if there was a sufficient recharge, and is the water level changing over time? So in order to get some data, there were some objectors to the CMD project, and they, by decree, they were told that they must monitor the 22 wells in order to verify that the CMD was not affecting surrounding wells close to the centralized system. And so they monitor these wells. We got permission from 10 of the well owners to use their data. And they received their data in the form of a monthly hydrograph. And you can see every one of these lines here represents drawdown of their well. And then we're looking for that water to return back to a stable level after the well has been pumped. So we worked with CMD, and we've got permission from 10 well owners, and they put us on the list, and we get monthly updates on every one of those wells. The trouble is looking at 1-minute samples for 15 years it's hard to get a good feel. So we had to come up with a way of processing that data. If you look at a typical well drawdown for domestic use, you have a static level, and then when you wake up in the morning, the activity starts, the well draws down, and eventually reaches a static level again during the night. So that's the way most of the days go for the well hydrographs. If you have a day without any activity at all, it's pretty easy to find that static water level. If you have pumping activity that extends beyond the day boundaries, then we don't use those days as part of our estimates. So we take that hydrograph and process it to get these red dots or red points, and we compile those initially over 15 years, and now we've added 4 more years of data. There's an example from the church. You just see weekend activity, a lot of zero slope. And we worked with the Division of Water Resources to post this data in a place where people can use or look at our water levels. And if you go to the Division of Water Resource website, and bring up Conifer Area, you get 10 wells shown on the map. If you select any one of those wells, you can get 19 years now of data. And this is an interesting plot here. If you look at each year, you get the snow melt is the peak. And so it's not really static level, but every year you get your snow melt. It dries out by the end of the winter, and then you get another surge. This is a well that's located just right next to a stream, so you don't get those variations. So for posting the data on the Conifer Area Council website, we use this format because we want to give these 5-year blocks and do a linear regression, see if it's going up or down. And every 5 years, we have an average number of feet per year that it's rising or falling. And what we do is pull all that data into a single chart so that we can get an overall view of where all 10 wells are moving and what's happening with our water level. And as Peter said, mostly we're just tracking based on snowfall, the way it's been working out. We don't really have any indication right now that from the 10 wells that we've got data on that the water level is dropping, which is good news. And the recharge is looking good the last few years. Water quality, in 1972, the Clean Water Act was passed. Federal law is probably the most influential environmental law that has been passed. And what it did was create an agency, a federal agency, the Environmental Protection Agency, to set contaminant levels for various chemicals or minerals, contaminants. And the EPA then is responsible for coordinating with the states. In Colorado, the Colorado Department of Health and Environment is the organization that manages the EPA limits, max contaminant levels, and it is the organization that issues discharge permits, allowing centralized systems to put water into the into the aquifer. So CMD was issued a notice of violation in 2019 for exceeding 400 milligrams per liter of TDS. And so the first thing we ask is, what is TDS? And what is it, I mean, what does this mean to us? And is it just Conifer Metro District, or is it the whole community? So TDS is a measure of the combined content of all the contaminants in the drinking water. It is below the 2 micron level. These aren't suspended solids, but these are ions and cations and anions in the water that are dissolved. And where does it come from? As the water passes over minerals and goes through the ground, of course, it picks up some TDS. As the if there's human activity, human waste, soaps, shampoos, cleaning agents, all that gets down into the water, groundwater. De-icing materials have tripled. The volume of de-icing materials has tripled since the 1970s. And year after year, those are going into the groundwater system. So after digging out the data on different systems, we find CMD was not unique in any way. And their trend line is currently up at 1,200. APMD is currently at 1,100. And you can see the max contaminant level at 400 down at the bottom of the graph. So we don't have just a single centralized system that's showing us both systems. And we also have the CSA water is commingled with the Conifer Metro District, and so that centralized system is also part of the blue CMD line. It's the composition, it's 40% chloride. There's magnesium and sodium as well. So one of the contributors is likely de-icers. But we also have other sources, and Russ has some other information on this from the watershed point of view. So in the last year or so, I've gone back and tried to take the history back as far as I could with the centralized systems to see, were we ever low? And the answer is we were. These two centralized systems started up around the early 2000s. And here we go back to, this is CMD, looking back to 07. And here's APMD going back to January 2013, and it's almost down at 400. So over time, we've created higher and higher TDS levels, a combination of sources, and it's going to take some years here for us to figure out how, if possible, we'd like to get those slopes to turn level or negative and keep the water quality maintainable, a sustainable water source. We were wondering if it was also in the surface water, and so Peter and I went around with a simple conductance meter and checked 14 different points on North and South Turkey Creek. North Turkey Creek comes down the hill here and takes a turn to the north and then heads over to Marshdale. And the input into the Conifer High School centralized system, we are measuring 53 milligrams per liter. That gives us a little idea of what the background is. And there's a spring that's uphill from Conifer Metro District. We call it Village Spring. I thought that was the one mentioned in their decree, but they're measuring 89 milligrams per liter. Both of those readings are fairly low. And everywhere within the activity center, we're seeing elevated levels And the highest one is 1769 here, right by the Sinclair station where the release to surface is for CSA. So that's one of the big quality issues, water quality issues that we have to be aware of and work on. Another one that's just come out this year, here in April, it's PFAS. And see if I can say it. It's polyfluoroalkyl substances. Since the 1940s, these man-made chemicals have been used for any number of things. Scotchgard is a good example. The waterproof garments. There's the firefighting foam is full of PFAS. Dental floss, shampoo, just any number of things contain these chemicals. These compounds contain carbon-fluorine bonds, which are very strong bonds, and so these chemicals don't break down. That's why they're called the forever chemicals. So PFAS has been tied to health issues. 89 or 9,600 deaths per year in the U.S., it's estimated, are tied to these pollutants, and 30,000 serious illnesses per year. And so it's not just the U.S., it's global. Right now there are articles online. The European Chemical Agency is going through exactly the same process that the EPA is going through with PFAS. And they're changing the regulations on how to manufacture things and how to keep the water clean for 27 countries in the European Union. EPA in April said set the new limits for 6 of these chemicals, and they're measured. For 2 of them, it's 4 parts per trillion. That's pretty darn small, and the other are 10 parts per trillion. So about 10% of the 66,000 public drinking water systems in the U.S. will have to add some processing to reach these limits. The treatments that they're using are reverse osmosis, RO systems, or activated carbon filters. Just to, there are pages of these Colorado water systems online, but I just thought I'd show a few of the ones that are close to Conifer. Conifer High School currently is above the PFAS levels that are proposed, and so they will have to put in some additional processing. South Evergreen is also above those levels. Those are called Category 1. Conifer Metro District is above the minimum reporting level, but below the threshold of max contaminant levels. And Aspen Park Metro District has not tested yet, but they will be, they're currently testing using a grant, and all of this is being funded from the infrastructure bill. And it's costing the government about $1.5 billion a year. And that will probably result in a lot of RO systems. The big problem there is where do you go with the cartridges and the waste from those? So conclusions, the average water levels are looking stable from the ones that we can see for 10 wells. The issue is water quality. We're seeing a gradual increase in TDS levels, and we're going to be looking at that, and PFAS is going to be another one of those issues that will be around. You'll hear a lot about that. So thank you, and I'll be available afterwards for questions. Thanks.
Thank you, John. That was great. We're running ahead of schedule. Oh boy, that's exciting. Unless I hear objections, I think we'll just move everything up 10 minutes and be out of there sooner. We are taping this, and it'll be up on the Conifer Area Council website. And don't forget, there's lots of refreshments. I'd now like to introduce Roy Laws with Jefferson County Health Department to tell us a little bit about the drinking water quality and our wonderful septic systems.
Sounds good. All right. I'm going to practice here just a minute, make sure I got this right. I think I got this figured out. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to come up and present today, tell the story about drinking water from private wells and septic systems, on-site wastewater treatment systems. You know, I live down in Littleton, so it's always a pleasure to drive up 285 and just see how spectacular and beautiful it is up here. So as I put this slideshow together, one of the thoughts that I keep in mind is that this really isn't about me, except for this slide, okay? So this is who I am, Roy Laws, professional engineer, REHS, that's for environmental health, registered environmental health specialist, Jefferson County Public Health, Environmental Health Services Division, phone number and email address. And enough about me. Okay. Things that we're going to talk about today, considering our background water conditions, what's naturally out there, and also what does it look like today after the impact of human activity in septic systems and water wells. What are the sources of contamination? Are there any treatment requirements? If so, what treatment options are available? And then we're going to talk about the wastewater treatment systems. So the first four are really about drinking water quality, and then we'll get into septic systems. Everybody likes good, clean water to drink. This is my water, and it's actually from downstream of this area, but we all like good, clean water to drink. It's essential to health. It's essential to happiness. Cool down in the summertime, play in, clean up, prepare our food. It's essential to life, for sure. So the question comes up, well, why would I want to test my well? Isn't it safe up here? And for the most part, yeah, water quality is pretty good most of the time. But there are localized problems that do occur. The other reason to test it is no one else is going to do it for you. You're not required to do it by law. So it really is for your information and benefit to understand what's in my water, and is there anything that I should be concerned about it so that I can treat the water. And then when we do test our water and we get these test results, what do we make of them? What do we need? What should we compare them to? Well, we really should compare our results to the Colorado Safe Drinking Water Standards. And if we get a result that's higher than what the drinking water standard is, then we should probably consider the health concerns about that, particularly in like say uranium, for example. If uranium in your well exceeds the safe drinking water standard, then you might want to say, well, what do I want to do to either treat that water or find something else to use for drinking and preparing food? When do you test your well? And I always struggle with the order that I have these in, but you know, we do want to recommend annual testing of your well, at least for bacteria and nitrate. And I'll explain why later. And then there's the baseline testing when you first drill a well. And you might want to take a look at a broader profile of contaminants that may be in your well, either human-caused contaminants or naturally occurring dissolved minerals. And then during a property transaction, you're going to buy a property from somebody else, they have a well, they have a septic system. You really should make sure that a good, thorough inspection of the septic system is done ahead of time, and that you understand what's in the well water. Previous owner might not have been concerned about the health issues, but you might want to make sure that, hey, what is the quality of this water, and am I going to need a treatment system or not? So those are good times to test. Things that we want to talk about as far as water quality goes. And as we've been telling this story, you realize, hey, I've got these precipitation events, the water trickles down into the ground, into the geology, and then how does it move from place to place is the hydrogeology. and movement, hydrology. So as it, coming from that precipitation and moving into this subterranean environment, it can pick up different contaminants or dissolved solids that can affect the taste or odor of the water, the hardness or pH of the water, is it acid or not? And when we talk about hardness, it's really an interesting measure, because we talk about how hard it is to make lather when you're using soap in the sink. And hard water will not lather up good. And then softer water, you can make a nice good lather. So if you wash your hands with soap at a place and gosh, you just can't make a good lather, you probably have hard water. Radioactivity, naturally occurring. Fortunately for us, we don't have any radio plants where we're working with radioactive materials in our area, so it would be naturally occurring radioactivity. Naturally occurring dissolved minerals, and this goes back to what Peter and John have been talking about, these total dissolved solids. And these are things that wouldn't necessarily be in the precipitation, which is usually free of dissolved solids, but as it moves through the groundwater system, it can pick these things up. Salts that can dissolve, can pick lead, fluoride, a couple, to mention a couple. And then also the human-caused contaminants. So as I said before, that we don't have widespread problems, it's not throughout the area, but there are certainly localized areas where we've got either high naturally occurring minerals that we want to look at, or human-caused contaminants. What's the recommended basic testing? Well, these three, bacteria, nitrates, and fluorides. Bacteria certainly can come in from, based on your well construction. If you've got a very shallow well there's some hand-dug wells that are rock-lined, and that could be subject to a lot of contaminants coming into it. Nitrates from septic systems or corralled livestock or fertilizer use. We don't necessarily have a lot of fertilizer manufacturing or use up in the mountains, but certainly we've got areas where we got corralled livestock, and we've got septic systems out here. And then fluorides. Now fluoride is more of a naturally occurring thing that dissolves from the geology of the rocks, but it can cause these problems, not necessarily a huge, I'll say, physical health problem, but again, mottled teeth, that's something that we want to prevent. So if high fluoride levels have caused this mottling of teeth, it doesn't necessarily cause tooth decay, but it does discolor the teeth. Other testing, if you live near a mining area, you might want to consider testing for heavy metals. If you live near a gas station or other kind of industrial facilities, or a service station, or an auto body shop, or any place where they're doing manufacturing or industrial work, you're going to take a look at some of these other contaminants. And again, as I mentioned, specific geologic areas. There's places where we know we've got uranium deposits, and often associated with uranium is fluoride. So these naturally occurring deposits that we can have in our mountains. And again, the pH, hardness, and these total dissolved solids, again, often affected by the geology of the water that's the rock, the geology of the rock that the water is flowing through. Testing resources, there are private labs that you can go to, and there's also certainly some water well consultants. Maybe you've got a well driller that you work with, and they may not be able to provide the testing, but they can probably help you collect the sample and then submit it to a laboratory. There are other pumping companies that I know even have laboratories, and they can do a lot of the water quality testing. You want to make sure that the lab is EPA certified, that it can do this, follow the safe drinking water testing methods. And often these outfits, private laboratory, or more of the water consultants, and your pumper can help you collect the sample if you need help with that. State lab is another good place to go to, and they have a whole variety of tests that they can do on your water for safe drinking water. But they don't provide any field collection, so you're going to have to collect that sample yourself and then transport it to the lab out at Lowry. Or, just one little note for us, Jefferson County Public Health does provide courier service for $10 a sample. So if you don't feel like driving across town to get to Lowry, you can drop the sample off with us, and our courier service will take it to the lab. Treatment technologies. Okay, so you tested your well and you found out you have some contaminants that are a little higher than the safe drinking water standard. We've got a whole variety of treatment technologies that are available. I actually don't have one on here called distillation. That's another method of purifying the water. So shock chlorinate the well. How many people have had have their wells shock chlorinated? Okay, several of you have. And that's probably because you had a high bacteria count, either the total coliform or the E. coli. Ultraviolet is also good for disinfection. Then we get into, if we want to remove minerals from the water, cartridge filters, ion exchange. We can even have carbon filters to kind of remove volatile organic compounds, those petroleum products that I had mentioned if you're near a gas station or where some fuel has been released into the ground. Reverse osmosis is another one that just pretty much removes all contaminants. And air strippers, and as I mentioned, distillation. A couple of treatments. Here's an example of what we call a reverse osmosis system. How many people, anybody have a reverse osmosis system? Well, there's a few folks that have them. All right. And they can be installed. This one here is under a kitchen sink. And so it's, because it's just under the kitchen sink and doesn't serve the whole house, it's called a point of view system. You can put these in for about $1,000. And often people can install it themselves. If they got some plumbing skills and can read and follow instructions, they can probably successfully install it themselves. Whole house system is going to be, can be several $1,000s. Does anybody have a whole house system? Now there's a couple of them out there. They can be pretty expensive. No matter what you put in, you got to remember there's going to be routine maintenance. So these are kind of filter type systems, and filters clog, they exceed their capacity, you need ongoing maintenance for them. Other information about water quality and septic systems. We have a variety of brochures, both in hard copy, but anymore folks seem to like to just get it off the internet and get an electronic copy, so those are certainly available. There's a number of great resources available online, and they keep on getting better and better, and I'll say more intuitive to use. Certainly, you can visit our website. Hyperlinks, I could give you those, but many of these, the search engines are so good anymore. When I want to find our website, I type in JCPH wells, JCPH septic system, something like that, and you'll usually land on our page. Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, type in CDPHE, private wells, you'll land on their webpage. EPA, same thing, they've got a very nice website for private wells. Montana State University must have had some grant funding for some quite a few years, because they have a really good site. It's called Well Educated, and it's they've got videos there. You can watch a video to shock chlorinate your well. This is like about a 10-minute video, and they do a really good job of walking you through the steps. And then lately, these other two are really excellent. And with this private well class, you can even take online courses. I don't know if they're like 10-minute sessions or 15-minute sessions, but they're these brief, very brief, I'll call it class that you can take. And I don't know if they've got a test, and it's not pass-fail, but it's, again, did you pick up the knowledge that they were trying to share with you? So it's available for free. The other one is this well owner. The way I type these out, I put spaces between them, but really when you do your Google search, all you got to do is type in privatewellowner.org and wellowner.org, and you'll land on those web pages. Excellent resources that are available. All right, so shifting now from our well water situation, let's take a look at our septic systems. And first thing you're going to see here on this side of it, I don't know how good this pointer is going to work, if I can find it. There we go. No, am I getting it? Yeah, it's supposed to be here. Yeah, anyway, not so good, huh? Oh, there it is. Okay, you can kind of see it. Good. So we got the well over here. Both Peter and John did a great job of talking about this fractured rock environment and these static water levels in our pump. So we're going to pump water up to the house. We're going to use it in our house for a variety of things, mostly hygiene and to clean up our laundry and take showers and baths and what have you, brush our teeth. Then we're going to discharge that water into through the sewer pipe. Then it's going to come into the septic tank, which is we call the primary treatment. And then once we're done with the primary treatment, it's going to go out to the soil treatment area, be discharged through perforated pipe, and some of it's going to percolate back down into the ground to recharge the groundwater table. So with that in mind, we do want to do a good job of cleaning this up before you or someone else drinks it. So it's important there is somewhat of a toilet to tap connection. Okay? So what's in domestic wastewater? I'm talking about residential wastewater. Most of it's just water. You pull water out of the ground, 95% water or more. What about that other 5%? Well, I started to think about that, and so I made a list. And what I found out was many of these things begin with the letter P. Okay? So, yeah, and sometimes a lot of toilet paper goes down the drain. But these are the product, the outputs that we have or things that we use, and they're going to get into our water. So we're going to turn the water to wastewater, and it's going to have some of these contaminants in there. And for folks that prefer more of the scientific terminology, we've got that in there too. But I wanted to be funny, and so I made up this list, and all these things start with the letter P. The other thing I didn't think about, a couple more to add to it, would be things that inadvertently go down the drain is a plastic Barbie doll head. Sometimes toilets get flushed and they go down the drain. Or contact lenses. Some of those things sometimes go down the drain. So sometimes these solid things are in it. So let's take a look about these inputs, what goes into our body. Good clean water. This one makes me happy. It makes my cardiologist frown. Then we got, this is what our registered dietitians would say. Lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, right? These are the healthy things to eat. Then we come over here to the human being, which is this food processing unit. All these good things go in, and then they kind of run through the system, and they come out the other end. Now, occasionally, we might pick up a foodborne illness, such as a norovirus. Anybody ever have norovirus? Yeah, not very pleasant. Good thing is it goes through you pretty quickly, 24 hours or so, 48 hours. It's going to make you feel miserable. And you're going to be, usually with noro, you're going to be discharging through this end and that end. So, outputs, these are some of the things that are going to go. We use our toilet. These are things that are going into our wastewater. I do need your help. I actually made two versions of this slide. Now, I want you to know or tell me if I overdid it or not. So this is version 1. Kind of like going to the eye doctor when they say which is better, 1 or 2, 1 or 2. So this is 1. Let's go to 2. Did I kind of overdo the puking thing here or not? So quick vote. Which do you like better, 1 or 2?
2.
1's better?
2.
2 is okay. Well, mixed vote. So this is what democracy is all about. So we're going to move on. Maybe keep it both. All right, another little look at our septic systems to understand a little bit more about what's going on. One thing that's missing in this picture, of course, is the well. But then again, we pump the water out of the ground. We use it in our house. We get pre-treatment in the septic tank. Then it's going to be discharged to the soil treatment area. They call this the vadose zone, but what it means is it's the unsaturated soil and bedrock. It's going to be discharged through this effluent delivery into trenches, beds, or drip dispersal, percolates through the ground, infiltrates, and then eventually makes it back to this groundwater table for groundwater recharge. But these are all the things that happen in the subsurface before it gets to the groundwater system. We're going to have oxygen in the soil, so if we've got some plants growing over the top of this, we don't want to put trees and big, deep-rooted things over our leach field, but grasses, wildflowers, those kind of things, shrubs, are all fine, but they're going to take up some of this effluent, particularly during the summertime and growing season. All right, thank you. And then we've got straining and infiltration, just physical removal, absorption, ion exchange through the soil, precipitation, some of the minerals, biotransformation. There's a lot of microorganisms that live down here, and they want to gobble up whatever in that wastewater. It's going to help them grow and thrive. So there's a garden down here of microorganisms that help clean up the wastewater. And then die-off and predation. What that means is, while the bacteria that live in our body, that they're used to this temperature-controlled environment and this nice living inside of you, once they're discharged to the field, there's going to be other microorganisms that are going to outcompete them, eat them up, or they're just going to die off because the environmental conditions aren't favorable to them. So septic tank, just thinking about the components and what it does here. First compartment, you're going to get this sludge, scum layer at the top and sludge layer at the bottom. And that's going to help start to clean up the water. Light things are going to float, fats, oils, and greases. Barbie doll heads will probably float. Toilet paper will be up in this layer. Down here is where the solids that are a little bit heavier are going to sink to. And this is going to include sometimes a wedding ring, probably glass contact lenses, the hardware that sometimes goes down the toilet. That's where you're going to find those when you want to try to recover them. And then this clear effluent is going to flow through these baffles into the second compartment where we get more floating of the lights and settling of the solids. And then we're going to have an effluent filter, which is going to filter out some of the particulate matter before it goes to the field. One of the things we're looking for is the retention time in our septic tanks, like how big a septic tank do I need for my house? Well, if you're discharging about 3-bedroom house, 450 gallons a day, we want that water to kind of the average drop to stay in there for about 48 hours, 2 days. So that means you're going to need a tank twice as big as your flow rate. So for a 3-bedroom house, you'd be looking at a 900-gallon tank. Okay? This is just another fancier septic system that's going to help us knock the nitrogen out of the wastewater. Otherwise, the nitrogen will go right through the system. This is just to show you about septic tank and soil treatment. And this is why we want to really take good care of our septic tank, not take it for granted, or the soil treatment area. The one I want to focus on is this fecal coliform bacteria. So here's what comes into the septic tank: 10 million coliform forming units. What goes out of the septic tank? 1 million. We've already done a pretty good job of cleaning it up. That's an order of magnitude. And then by the soil treatment, by the time it's filtered through 3 to 5 feet, we're looking at 99% removal of that bacteria. So the septic tank and the soil treatment area are real workhorses as far as cleaning up the contaminants that we put into our wastewater. Septic system dues, know where your system is located. Think about pumping it every 3 to 5 years. Maybe get it inspected once a year. Just have somebody come out and says, everything looks like it's going the way it should. Keep records of it. Repair leaking faucets and toilets. That should be really number one on the list. Don't overuse water. Don't abuse water. Easy to say, or easy to do when you don't have 3 teenage kids that are really concerned about their health and hygiene and wash their clothes 3 times a day. All right. Divert surface water away from the leach field. Call a professional. Jefferson County Public Health when you got questions. All right, and whenever you're repairing your system, make sure you get a permit, because there are regulations and it's got to be done correctly so that it functions properly and we can clean up our water. Don't park over your system, leach field or the tank. Don't dig up or build on top of it. Don't plant deep-rooted trees over that leach field area like I mentioned. Small grasses and flowers are fine. And don't flush those wedding rings and Barbie dolls. Keep them out of the septic system. Cut chemicals and take them to like the Rudy Road Recycling Center. Find other ways to dispose of it. Don't do it down the drain. Be careful of the gases in the septic tank. They are toxic, so you want to watch when you do a self-inspection, which they say don't. You should know what you're doing. Be careful for that. Garbage disposals, most homes have them, but they do build up the solid material in the septic tank. It's going to lead to more frequent pumping. Maintain your septic system. Why? To save money, protect your health and the environment. And also the economic health of the community. If you live in an area where septic systems have polluted the groundwater system, that can have a negative effect on home value. So we're fortunate. We really live in a wonderful place. You know, we want to be able to use the resources, use the groundwater, recharge the groundwater, use but not abuse. So we're very fortunate to live up here. So that's it. So it brings it all back to me again. Here I am, my name, how to get in touch with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy. Now we'll take a 20-minute break. We were scheduled to get back online at 10:20, let's say 10:10, and then we'll resume with Russ Clayshulte will get us back on schedule.